You know, in the hearing of nearly 300 witnesses, and I think that's close to what it was, Councilmember Catania, that I asked repeatedly, who is harmed and what is the injury by passing this measure? And throughout, it was clear that the only continuing harm by not passing this was to continue discriminating against other citizens, residents of Washington, D.C., and to deny them benefits and equal opportunities that I know that my wife Barbara and I have, and the harm was clear there. But the other harm that emerged in the testimony, and a lot has been said about this, is the continuation of services to be provided by current D.C. contractor Catholic Charities. Now, we've spent a lot of time thinking about what that means, what's right, what's wrong, what should we allow, and there's a lot of focus on the issue of Catholic Charities. But there was not a lot of focus on the words DC contractor. Catholic Charities is one of many contractors in the district. As chair of Human Services, and almost all those contracts and services come under Human Services, there are other contractors. There's Lutheran Social Services, Methodist Board of Child Care, Family Matters, used to be Family and Child Services, Pathways to Housing. They also provide services to the same residents in the district. They do not ask to be exempt from any DC laws. Choosing to be a contractor to serve folks in the District of Columbia is not a right. You're part of a bidding process. So it does not mean, therefore, that people will not receive services. It's a choice that Catholic Charities makes to bid to be a contractor to carry out services that the DC laws require us to carry out, and paid for by all the taxpayers' funds. To provide city services with taxpayer funds, but to tell some taxpayers that you will not receive those services equally to other residents based on this status is not right. And that's where the harm can be found. So I don't believe that the idea that Catholic Charities may or may not decide to be a service provider in DC anymore necessarily means that that there's some harm that can't be mitigated. But discrimination can't be mitigated. So with that, I'm very pleased and proud to support this action by the council today.
This has been democracy in action in the District of Columbia. I want to commend Mr. Mendelson for the 17, 18 hours of hearing or listening to all sides of this issue. As all of us know, this community is deeply divided on this issue. Deeply divided, not shallowly, but deeply divided on this issue. And it's, to some extent, cuts across racial lines, unfortunately. The African American community has much different views about this issue. Not everybody, but I think the majority of my constituents in Ward 8 does. But notwithstanding that, I think this council has an obligation to tackle these deeply rooted issues. I prefer the initiative route. I prefer to follow other states who have done it this way. On the other hand, there was difficulty for Bishop Jackson and others to shape an initiative that didn't violate the Human Rights Act, which I support entirely, which I sent to the council when I was mayor. Voted for every amendment to it, including the ones that Mr. Graham talked about. So where am I going with this is that in a democracy, there ought to be the right to dissent. Thomas Jefferson and others who were framers of the Constitution argued for the right to dissent and not be castigated as being out of touch and out of tune with the majority. The right to dissent protects the minority from that accusation and that situation. The Bill of Rights, if you look at it, as I've done carefully, is one of rights and responsibilities. Freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom to dissent. And so I stand here today to express in no uncertain terms my strong commitment to the gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender community on almost every issue except this one. Mr. Graham sort of talked about a whole range of amendments since 2005. I've supported every one of those amendments, every one of them, without equivocation. Even the Domestic Partnership Amendment, which had great consternation among my constituents, among the religious community and others, but I voted for it anyway. So I'm saying to those who would disagree with my position, understand that I'm not lost my way. I'm not backed up on this issue. Then there are those who say, well, you were a civil rights leader, you were fighting against segregation in the South. No question about it. I fought against it in the North. And so it's not fair to make this one issue a litmus test as to one's commitment to human rights, to justice. And I resent those who would make it a litmus test, would make it a litmus test. That's unfair. Look at where I've been on this, longer than anybody on this council. In 1971, when I was president of the school board, DC School Board, the school system wanted to fire a gay man at McKinley Tech School. I stood firm and said, no way are you going to do this. Throughout the whole campaign in 1978, I had the strong support of the gay and lesbian community. And I appointed the first gay person, Richard Mosby, to my cabinet. What am I saying? That my commitment is deep. And I resent those who would boo me and castigate me because of this one vote. That's not democracy. Those who would do that are against democracy. Those who would do that are against the right to dissent. Those who would do that would be against, they would be for totalitarianism, I guess. But I am firm on my commitment to this community. And I'm going to vote no. It wasn't an easy vote. I take this very seriously. For those who introduced it, I commend them for that. I commend the courage of some other members of the council to step out on this. But I'm going to vote no because my conscience says so. Because the majority of my constituents says so. And this is not to deprecate anybody's position. But marriage to me is different than domestic partnerships or other kind of things. I think it's the most sacred act in the Christian religion. A covenant between two individuals and their God, or whoever you called him or her, and the state. And so I stand to vote no against this measure.
Thank you, Mr. Barry. Further discussion?